Welcome to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar here on STL Sports Central. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Mike Claiborne, Stefan Caray here with you. It's been a while since I've done one of these shows, so Claves, you might have to get me up to speed on what's been happening in the Cardinals world. Last night, losing 7-3 to the Padres. They're on their West Coast extravaganza. Are you enjoying the Hollywood Walk of Fame? Do you have a star yet?
I'm waiting on one. I thought I would have had one by now, but unfortunately, obviously I don't know the right people. But yeah, I like the West Coast swing. San Diego's always a great place, especially because of the proximity of the ballpark. LA, it's Dodger Stadium, and they'll have a big crowd. So yeah, this is one of the times I enjoy it. The weather is very comfortable, so no complaints from me. I'd like for us to play better, but I'm not in charge of that.
Well, that's a really good place to start. I think I didn't get to cover any of the trade deadline coverage. I was doing games in South Carolina with ESPN. And this is certainly something that it felt like the Cardinals needed to do. They needed to offload their players, give up.
They didn't offload enough of them.
I think that's a very fair point. That's a very fair point. And when you look at the market for what was out there certainly were potentially more trades to be made, but the conservative approach with the offensive side of things has remained over the last few years. What do you feel like with the future of this Cardinals team? Right decision, wrong decision, just immediate reaction to all that?
Well, it was the right decision to move players for assets. Now, we don't know if any of these guys can play or not because most of them are in AA. But I think it's just time to change the culture more than anything else. And as I said earlier, this offseason should be a busy one because we need to move some more people and just bring in just a new, fresh batch of people that have a little bit more energy, a little bit more excitement, maybe a little bit more talent. But this is going to be a process that's going to take a couple of years, maybe less. It just depends on, how you strike it, because we've seen teams get healthy overnight. But it is the process of beginning it is the big challenge, because, to be honest with you, Stefan, we haven't gone through this before in St. Louis. It hasn't happened. And so now we're all going to take these steps together and figure this thing out and see where it ends up within a year or so.
The Cardinals seem like an organization that has had so many trades that they haven't felt have been mutually beneficial, where the other side has gotten the better end of the deal. But at this point, how many of your players in this runway year do you know who they are? And I think we're starting to see that we are getting more of an idea. Gorman coming back, he's going to take the bulk of the reps at third base with Arenado being out. But guys like Nootbaar, guys like Gorman, they are players that I'm sure would have been attractive to other teams, but may not have gotten quite the haul that you would have hoped for.
Yeah, and part of that problem is the fact that they didn't play enough. Between Gorman and Nootbaar, they've both been injured this year. The Gorman thing has been held up more because there was a blockage at third base. But, if had they played and given you maybe more of a full season look, then maybe they would have gotten more. And then again, maybe they would have regressed even to the point where you couldn't get as much for them as you would hope.
Yeah, that certainly seems like a possibility, if not a plausibility, for the Cardinals. Now, again, you look at this game in a completely different lens, given the product or the players on the field, than the ones that were there prior to the trade deadline. There's less frustration when they lose, more growing pains, as you would expect, but still one game under 500. It's not like they're fully out of it with, a couple months left to play, but the hope of making maybe a wild card spot with the way that the other few teams are playing, it seems a little bit grim.
Yeah, well, they have their work cut out for them. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have to play hard, play better. Can they climb back in it? Yeah, they can. I mean, I think that's the great thing about the wild card. The reason why you're a wild card is your consistency isn't what it needs to be. Therefore, you find yourself having a hot week, then you have a cold week, then you have 3 games that you're really good at, and you have 2 games that you're bad at. And that's why you find yourself in that position of being the last person in or last team in. So when you look at the other teams that they're chasing, they've all gone through it. So it's a matter of you getting hot and them getting cold, and who knows what can happen. And I really think this year, this division that the Cardinals are in, we look at Milwaukee, we look at the Cubs, we look at the Cardinals. But I'll tell you, the team, man, you better pay attention to is Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is a team that has a lot of tools. Their pitching is starting to come back. They play in a ballpark where they can really produce some runs. That's a team that I think, as I said in the beginning, I thought it would be Chicago, Cardinals, and Cincinnati. I didn't see Milwaukee being this good. But with that said, Cincinnati, I think, has been rejuvenated, and they're going to be in the hunt. So the Cardinals have some real leapfrogging to do to get to Cincinnati and then perhaps Chicago.
Cincinnati is a team to me that kind of resembles the Baltimore Orioles, is that there was so much expectation for them to be good over the last few years with De La Cruz, with Steer, with Abbott, and they never really quite put it together. This year, they're starting to do so with some key trades. And another team that I think we need to have our eyes out on, which they're not in the NL Central, the Miami Marlins are one of the best teams in baseball over the last few weeks. They've won 7 straight series, I believe, including a sweep over the Yankees for the first time in franchise history. If the Cardinals can do their rebuild or refresh in any way similar to what the Marlins have been able to do, they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can get healthier quicker than what you used to. Now, can Miami hold this run together? I don't know, because they're going to have to do it with the guys they have, because the trade deadline is come and gone. So it's not like some help is on the way. They have to figure this out. And just like the Cardinals are going to have to do it. But with that said, they just show up looking to play. They have some good young talent. They've made some good trades over the past few years, and some of those guys have really grown into the role. And now it's a situation where they just have to go out and play and see what happens. And I think the Cardinals are going to be in that similar situation. Just go play, man. And maybe you're going to have a step back from here and there. But at the end of the day, you have to feel like you're going to be better today than you were yesterday.
Confidence is key. That's certainly the case for the Marlins, who are now sitting at 500. The Cardinals, 1 game below 500, a big series against the Dodgers upcoming at Chavez Ravine at Dodger Stadium, one of the most famous ballparks in the world, against that juggernaut of an offense that we will see and have seen already earlier this year when the Cardinals took 2 out of 3 from them at Busch Stadium. A quick reminder that this show is brought to you by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. This is STL Sports Central's Card Central 365 show. Mike Claiborne, Stefan Caray. We're talking all about the Cardinals, all about the trade deadline, and of course now the Cardinals and the Dodgers. Sonny Gray versus Tyler Glasnow in game number 1. Gray looking for another good start, trying to string them together as really the main solid piece in this rotation. What can he do tonight against the Dodgers team that's trying to get back to being the top team in the league?
Well, he just has to go out and be Sonny, be efficient with his pitching. He's a guy that when he gets to 90 pitches, that's a wrap. We're done. Now, 90 pitches might mean the 5th inning. It might mean the 7th inning. Could mean the 8th inning. But he has to be efficient early and not let traffic get on base, the bottom end of the order where the big 3 in the front can come back and really have some meat on the table. So I'm just looking for him to go out and just be efficient tonight. And, the weather will be good. He hasn't pitched poorly. But, he hasn't been the same Sonny since he had the one hitter. So we have to find out how we can get that mojo back.
And the Dodgers haven't been themselves really for quite a bit now. They're still playing good baseball, but they're not playing dominant baseball. Against the Tampa Bay Rays in St. Petersburg, they struggled. They weren't really beating up on that team in that small ballpark. So maybe the Cardinals can catch them off balance at their home ballpark. And again, going back to this trade deadline, there's so many questions surrounding why the Cardinals did what they did or why they didn't do more. It seemed like their moves were consistent with what they were doing in the draft. Try and get more right-handed pitching, try and get some more power, and whether or not they assess those needs, we'll have to wait and see because, like you said, the majority of them are in the minor leagues. Is there one prospect of the group that you're more excited for than any of the others?
No, I don't know because they're prospects. I don't know enough about them to be able to say, I can't wait to see this guy or that guy. I think the question for me is, if we look back to last year's draft and you look at Weatherholt and what he's been able to do in a very brief period of time, when do you see him? And I think the other question is, where is he going to play? You got a log jam at third. You have Gold Glover at second. You have a very promising shortstop that's already here. The outfield is crowded. So the question is, what does he look like in a year? And I don't know what that looks like because, as I said, I just gave you the reasons on we have some crowded positions. And you know what? I'm game on moving any of them. If this young man is that good of a player, and he's shown so far that he has the potential to be, hey, there's not a safe spot on this roster for me. Maybe Brendan Donovan because he's versatile and I think he really mirrors the future. But everybody else, man, I'm listening. I'm listening.
I think that's a really good approach, Claibs. And again, we're not John Mozeliak, we're not Heim Bloom, but when you look at what Weatherholt's been able to do, his numbers are better than Walker's. They're better than Wynn's were at AAA. His strikeout numbers are lower. His walk rate is higher. His power numbers are higher than Wynn's certainly were at Memphis. So there's a lot of questions arising. When do we see him? What's he going to play? But of course,
but let me stop you for a second. Here's the one factor that we need to take into account. I don't compare them to Weatherholt for this reason. He's older than those guys when they first broke in. He's the same age as Walker, all right? And Walker was a kid coming out of high school. Same thing with Mason Wynn. So I think the fact that he's more of a finished product at this stage compared to what they were when at that same time they came into pro baseball, I think you have to look at that situation even more because, and I'm not surprised at Weatherholt is playing this well because you thinking about the age factor, he's probably when he came out of West Virginia, he was already, in my opinion, a AA player. So now he's ascended to be AAA and he's doing well there. So now the next step is the big leagues. So while he hasn't had as much time in the minors, I think the fact that he played in a competitive conference and played college baseball to a high level puts him in a better situation to be able to get to the big leagues quicker.
I think that's a great point. And again, I wasn't necessarily comparing their style of play, more so the fact that, again, Walker was not necessarily fast-tracked to the big leagues, but he was in that spring training 50-50 question. Is he going to make the big league club? Out of spring training, it was 2023 when he made the big league club and maybe felt a little bit rushed because they had to send him back to Memphis after 70 some odd at bats. Weatherholt seems like he's ready for this moment and ready to be playing here. Now, you could have maybe addressed this issue by trading away one of your infielders. Who knows what conversations were had for guys like Gorman or were had for guys like Donovan or Wynn or even Contreras for that matter to try and create a little bit of breathing room for Weatherholt to get in on the field. That's the difficult part is where do you play him? Where do you put him? And how can he contribute every single day without hurting someone else that you have as part of your future plan?
Well, yeah. And the fact is, if you're going to bring him up, you bring him up here to stay. Okay. We're not going to go through the Memphis shuttle because if he's not ready at that stage, then he just might as well stay in the minors and get more at bats and play. We have too many guys who we sent back and forth because the first thing we said, well, he needs to play more. Well, in his case, considering where you drafted him, you should think that he should be big league ready to play every day. And as we keep circling the field, trying to figure out where to land on what position he's going to play, the issue is when he gets here, make sure he stays here and you ride the waves with him. We saw that a couple of years ago with Mason Wynn. They brought him up with about 6 weeks left in the season, and they just said, "Hey, man, you have your highs and lows." But that next spring training, he was ready to go.
And it makes sense to let him dip his toe in the water in this case.
Yeah.
When you look at where they've played him, it's been second base and shortstop until the other night. They started playing him at third base.
Yeah.
That's a huge opportunity for him to show that he can play over there. And I don't think there's any concern about his athleticism or his glove. His bat speaks for itself. So, like you said, pressure is on for all those guys. I personally would love to see him sooner rather than later just to get an idea, especially if this is the group that he's going to be playing with. He needs to understand what responsibilities will fall on him for the next few years with this Cardinals team if this is the core that they're trying to build.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because if we're turning the page on this season and the players that come with it, then we might as well get used to who's next. Because we've already seen enough. And, we went through this season of evaluation. And I think we've seen enough to know who can do what and who can help and and there's some guys who are major league players. I don't know if I'd call them winning players. And I'm looking for the batch of winning players When you look at the pitching rotation, you say, well, he's a big league pitcher. Yeah, but he's a fifth starter on a good team. I'm looking for guys who are front end guys on every position on good teams, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to have a very good team, not just a team.
This is a lineup for the Cardinals that it doesn't really, at least looking at it from the day-to-day, doesn't incite a whole lot of fear in an opponent. And that's the type of lineup that I think all of us are looking for, is one that has every player giving you a good chance to not only get on base, but to do a little bit of damage. Not necessarily for power, but have extra base hit potential. Right now, off the top of your head, there aren't a ton of them in this lineup that can really, really do damage.
No, you're right. I think where you're headed, we watched San Diego for 3. They don't hit a lot of home runs. They don't do a lot of things, but you know what, man? They don't have a difficult out in their lineup now, and they find a way to put hits together, where you're not counting on just one person. Now they add a little bit more pop in the back end of their lineup, and I think that's what's going to make them a pretty interesting team as they get deeper into the season. So if we have something like that where you're not putting it in the lap of one person or two people, and we kind of went that route when we had Goldschmidt and Arenado. Didn't work. So maybe we ought to look at being more diverse with regard to your lineup and being able to do multiple things.
I think that's a really, really good approach, Claibs. And a quick reminder to everyone watching, baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. You're going to want to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to Card Central 365. Stefan Caray, Mike Claiborne. I was almost fusing our names together. I almost said Claiborne. And
would be the first time I've been called that.
Oh, you know what? I bet my dad wish he had your last name just with how much time you guys spend together anyway. But here's the thing. We're talking a lot about these young players. They're going into Dodger Stadium, which is an iconic ballpark against an iconic team. How important is it not necessarily to go and win the series against the Dodgers, but to gain confidence that you can compete with teams like this, even if you don't have your best guys?
Well, you know what? I think it's important because you've already beaten them 2 out of 3. Now, granted, it was in St. Louis, so you can play with them. I think B, you have to continue to make the statement that we're trying to be better, because it doesn't get any easier. You come home, you face the Cubs. Cubs are playing pretty good baseball. So you have to have the mindset of saying, look, we can show up and play with anybody. We just have to make sure we're on the same page. So, yeah, you come out here and get 2 out of 3 and you win the season series against the Dodgers. I think that's a real statement. And maybe that's the beginning of something special where you can get on a little bit of a run. You have the Cubs at home. You get 2 out of 3 against them. Now, all of a sudden, you have the momentum as you get deeper in the month of August. I think August is an important month for this team, because if you don't have some sort of real feel, then September, you're counting down days. You're just like, look, can't wait to get this over with. And that's not how you want to finish your season.
You don't want to have a 2-month dredge of a back end of the season if you're the Cardinals. This is a really, really difficult time if you're a fan that was expecting, hey, maybe we're a wild card team. We're doing something that we've never had to do, as you previously mentioned. But I think by and large, it's been handled very well by Ollie Marmol, by the players. And a report came out the other day about him pulling aside some of the guys that he would consider team leaders and clearly defining their roles and what he needs from them to try and build for the future. What can you say about Ollie Marmol and what he has done this season?
I think this is his best job of managing, period. he hasn't had too many distractions with regard to injuries. I think we've seen some guys improve significantly. When you look at a guy like Jordan Walker, who was a defensive liability last year, much improved. You look at guys who have played positions for the first time. You look at Herrera and what he's been able to do and continue to swing the bat. I think when you look at a guy like Alec Burleson and his improvement, not just offensively, but the way he's handling himself in the outfield for a guy who didn't have position 2 years ago. The catching situation. I mean, there's a lot of things that have improved, and there's room for even more improvement. And I think he and his staff have done a remarkable job in getting guys locked in. Now, would you like to have a little bit more consistent pitching? Of course you would. But I'll tell you this team would be in big trouble if it wasn't for the bullpen. This bullpen, most nights, has given them a chance to win. And it will include the guys that they've been able to rotate through Memphis as well. If your starting pitching was as good as your relief pitching, then we'd probably be talking about not only wild card spot, but maybe winning the division. The issue here, and I know people say, well, we don't hit enough. Yeah, but you know what? It's hard to hit a lot of nights when you're already trailing 4-0 after the second inning. So if you got better starting pitching, this team probably would go in a better direction. So I think Ollie's done a really good job. I'm happy for the direction, and I think he's going to be part of the future as well in being able to have the patience and also the courage to push players to be better and challenge them to be better, and along with his staff. So, that element of this organization, I'm really not concerned about. I think it's the fact of getting better players to manage and coach.
And I'm glad you articulated that, because it seemed like you're just going through social media, everybody expects Chaim Bloom to just go and make a change. Well, I believe if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A team that was expected to be not in a rebuilding year, but in a year where they weren't going to be even as competitive as they are right now, Ollie Marmol deserves his flowers. This entire staff deserve their flowers for being able to keep it together, keep them competitive, and at least for a good portion of the season, play a very intriguing brand of baseball. Yes, that has changed over the last month and a half where things have kind of gone awry, but they really did gain value on some players that were on expiring contracts and got something back for them, which is a win in and of itself. And it begs the question, if you're not going to win the World Series, what's the point? You've got to find a way to get new players in to continue to reload and build this franchise back to where they used to be. I think that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and it takes time. I think with the new regime coming in, the question is, how do they evaluate talent compared to the current regime, and what are you looking for? So that's, I think, going to be the big head scratcher for everybody on what does this look like next year, as far as we're looking for more speed, we're looking for power, we're looking for better defense. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but I'm looking at this as a situation where the change is probably needed. And what this looks like next year, we're all kind of hoping and wondering that it's going to be different than what we currently see.
Well, the man that belongs on the big screen had expert analysis for us all afternoon long. Mike Claiborne, thank you so much for being here on Card Central 365. Cardinals will take on the Dodgers at 9:10 p.m. Central Time at Dodger Stadium. We'll see if they can get back to 500 for everyone here at STL Sports Central. I'm Stefan Caray signing off. We'll bring you more coverage later on tonight.